Hello, everyone. Warm welcome to Security Week webinar on ICA Cybersecurity, jointly hosted by Trend Micro TX1 Network. And I'm Muthukumar Natarajan, Principal Solution Architect from Trend Micro, and I work based out of Singapore. Let me quickly share my slides to take you through the key topics we're going to discuss today. And I want to start this webinar discussing on the threat landscapes and targeted attack targeting ICS and OT environment, the business implications, the common business and operation challenges in IT and OT environment, and what are the strategies, possible strategies moving forward we can adapt to tackle these attacks. I want to conclude this session with a use case that how we helped our customers with TX1 Networks in addressing those challenges. So before I jump into the topic, I want to give a quick introduction on TX1 Network. So TX1 Network is actually a joint venture company from Trend Micro and Moxa. As you know, Trend Micro has been a pure play security vendor for more than 30 years. And we have been a trusted security partner and advisor for a lot of customers and partners across the globe. On the other hand, Moxa has been extensively involved in OT space in terms of OT network expertise and knowledge in OT space. We want to have best of both for our customers, and that's how we spinned up a TX1 Networks from Trend Micro. How does this solution fit in? So you can take this as a reference architecture. So level 5 and above is enterprise applications, enterprise network. You see emails and other systems connecting to the space, facilitating connectivity to the OT or to the remote access to the OT environment. Level 4, you will have some of the systems, applications relevant to the OT space, DMZ and beneath of the critical spaces of OT itself, from level 3 to level 2, 1, and 0. And as we are having both solution from both, right from applying ICS cybersecurity, Trend Micro Solutions fits in to handle those enterprise network security requirements, right from emails, network, cloud workloads, and much more, detection response kind of capabilities as well. And solution from TX1 nicely fit in to address the security requirement on the OT space from level 3 and beneath. And what are the challenges that we see as in terms of OT space? What are the key challenges that we're actually seeing today? As if you observe from 2010 to 2017, in terms of attacks, what we hear about attacks are pretty much state sponsors targeting critical infrastructures, state-of-the-art attacks, and they're very targeted. But from year 2017 towards 2020, what you hear here is the attacks were just shifted towards smart factories. We can see a lot of smart factories has been hit by ransomware attacks, the production lines going down, complete factories coming down, some of the hospitality customers as well. In this, we could say because of digital transformation, to enhance the business possibility by having connectivity to the internet, exposing some of the systems. And we could see these are the recent ransomware attacks right from 2019 to 2020. Could be from Lock or Goga, as well as fresh as Code Lock in 2020. They have seriously hit some of those smart factories and has a serious business impact for them. And we could see why they are targeted towards ICS, because if you look at some of these ransomware targeted and to start the encryption process, only if they identify process and files related to the ICS applications like GE and Honeywell and VMware and so on and so forth. And we can see this trend can increase as we see there's a huge demand for IT and ICS and OT environment to reach out and have a connectivity to outside, to have effective monitoring and management. As it opens up a lot of business opportunity, this can also open up a lot of risk exposure to those environments. So when we are saying in terms of attacks and threats, as we discussed before, these are ransomware targeted attacks targeting specific towards ICS environment and OT environment. On the other hand, how's the weakness spot in the ICS and OT environment in terms of applications vulnerability, operating system vulnerabilities, and protocol vulnerabilities? As from 2010, you can see a steady increase of those vulnerabilities found in this environment. Towards 2020, you see a drop, but that's just the first half of the year from ICS cert. And we would see this is going to steadily increase if you look at the roundup number towards the end of the year. Trend Micro consistently involved in terms of vulnerability research, in terms of applications, ICS vulnerabilities extensively on the devices and applications. And what we do in terms of when we discover the vulnerability, we disclose to the vendor and we give them a deadline, say, hey, go and come up with a patch before I do a public disclosure. So in a way, we work towards pre-disclosed vulnerability and give a heads up to them. It's kind of bug bounty program across the globe. And what we are seeing in terms of that observation, there's a steady increase of 16% of the vulnerabilities compared to the first half and second half of 2019. What that means is there's a lot of window of opportunity for attackers and attack APT groups and advisories to target these vulnerabilities in terms of ransomware attack, in terms of malware attacks, and so on and so forth. While we're having this weakness as in surfacing up in terms of vulnerability on different levels, what is the mean time to patch? And this is from our observation. As we are disclosing vulnerabilities to the vendor, we also observe how much time does the ICS and OT vendor takes to release a patch after vulnerability disclosure to those vendors. Somewhere around 146 days. That's a big window. But this is not the time taken for the customers to patch up the system. It will take even much longer time, depend on the system outage, depend on the maintenance window, and so on and so forth. Some environment, what do we see? They don't even patch up the system because they are afraid by patching up a system if that is crashing this application or creating conflict with applications and so on and so forth. So most of the systems we do see, a lot of them is unpatched. And in this case, we're not just talking about vulnerability and unpatched systems in terms of just vulnerability. It could be the OT applications, the device itself, and even the OT protocols itself, and so on and so forth. So having this vulnerability is a big window of opportunity. We're going to see how we can effectively approach this and handle this problem with an alternative control in upcoming slides. So what are the underlying business and operation challenges? And let's understand and take a closer look. What are the three different types of smart factories that we see today? The first one is engineering operated. So heavily depends on human manpower. Not much of connectivity, is mostly dependent on labor intensive works, manual process, not fully automated. So in the event if some of the devices goes down, they can just back it up with a manual process and people's in place. Heavily labor intensive, that's the first category of them. But that doesn't mean that they don't have any impact in terms of cyber attack. They will have impact, but some of the manual process can be reused when systems are down. The second category of hybrid customers, they're actually trying to keep up with the business to the market needs and to the having an enhanced business operation. They will actually adapting new applications and connectivity. But at the same time, you will have a legacy manual process in place. So in this environment, it's a perfect combination of chaotic situations which don't have the device visibility, and in terms of operational gaps, in terms of high security weakness, because they're trying to adapt into the space. And if you look at the third category, is most of IP connected devices, or we can say IPization customers, fully automated process. Each of the process and the production lines are connected with each other. They have an output will be used in the other production lines and so on and so forth. So having an impact on any part of this smart factories, any part of smart factories could impact the complete operations and so on and so forth. That's why you may hear stories like one part of the production line getting hit by the ransomware attack, bringing down the entire plant. So these are the factors which actually move towards the connectivity, fully connected, and has a dependency on the output from different production lines. So let's look at the third categories. And I'm not saying the category 2 of hybrid customers and engineering operator will not have an impact. They will have some manual process to keep the operation running when there is a cybersecurity attack. But even hybrid will have a serious impact as well. But when you look at the fully connected, fully automated industry, which we are looking at in terms of Industry 4.0, will have a serious impact if there is a cybersecurity attack there. So let's focus on that, how we can address some of the problems we discussed before in terms of vulnerability, in terms of flat network. One of the common things you would hear in this space is also flat network because of the nature of the operation, nature of the business communication, nature of the application communication, and the nature of how the OT protocols communicate. Even today, if you see some of the PLC devices we see within the OT space come with a static IP address. So you cannot go in a full-fledged VLAN approach or segmentation approach on a layer 3 level in these IP factories. So we may need to take a layer 2 approach where we can create segmentation, but you don't affect the architecture of the communication protocols and so on and so forth. So how do we do that? And before I jump into this use case that describes how we can bring the layer 2 segmentation, I want to touch on a couple of other challenges that you may see on this space. You could see due to the geographical challenges and distances in the OT space in terms of architecture, in terms of network, as whenever we talk to the customer, we never seen a standard of network architecture or security architecture is established. Most of these OT smart factories, when you walk into it, they may not have a complete blueprint. That's a big challenge. But on the other hand, there's also a low tolerance to the latency and downtime. That's why if you look into those operation places, we do not hear any situations where customer deployed inline security solutions to prevent attack. Most of the time, the adoption of solutions are towards IDS mode, running out of span and monitoring this attack. Now, looking at the challenges today we are facing, you need to have a solution that can prevent and just monitor, because this is more reactive in this space, where if there is any ransomware pumping in, trying to bring the factory down, if you get notified by the time you react to that, it may have a serious impact there. So there need to be a shift in terms of adapting how we can apply security into this OT space as well. And also there's a huge lack of in-house expertise and understanding towards security requirement in the cybersecurity space. So every time when we meet with the customers, try to explain the situations, typically the operation people are not, so to say, given a high priority towards cybersecurity. because for them, the priority is more towards availability, accuracy, and speed. On the other hand, we want to create a lot of educational to bridge the gap and say how having a cybersecurity weakness can bring all these key factors that you need to achieve. And on the other hand, you may not have a centralized visibility in terms of assets and threats, because as this is a vast environment, having a lot of devices connected to different production lines, you may not have a complete visibility on what are the assets and where they are, how they're connected, how they're communicating, and what are the threats in terms of the traffic they're seeing within the network. So these are the common challenges we see, and you may see a lot of legacy systems out there. Even today, when I'm having a discussion with one of the customer last week, his PLC, the HMI interface we just received had a Windows 7 running in there, and these operating systems may not be even having in patches from Microsoft. So it has carries a serious challenges there, having a legacy systems as part of this whole operation as well, because this is how the applications are designed to run there. So there's a challenge in there. So that space need to be addressed as well. So typical approach for such customers when they have that the common security approach we hear from this OT space or even ICS environment is adapting to the air gap network. So when we talk to the operation people say, oh, no, my solution is morely air gap, so I don't have any risk. But that's just a myth. So let's say if today's environment is completely air gap, the high chances of having insider attack is huge. You already have people bringing in their laptop to do maintenance work. And we have seen several cases where the maintenance people bring in the laptop, connecting to these devices, and just spreading a WannaCry attack. And it's because air gap, thumb drives and portable devices is heavily used to transfer files and copy files and so on. The high risk of introducing risk into this space is highly available there. So air gap is not just completely immune to these cyber attacks. Air gap has its own weakness, and it's completely possible that having an attack propagated from the maintenance people or even an insider attack or accidental attack would happen, trigger to bring down the whole factory. So having a security measure at the different layers is pretty much important to achieve an effective cybersecurity there. So what are the strategies moving forward? We talked about threat landscape, what's the target and how it's shifting, and what are the key problems in terms of business and operation challenges and demands for the business and so on and so forth. And how the traditional air gap approach as an antidote is not going to work anymore because of the need of Industry 4.0 and the business demand. How we can adapt a strategy to address these problems. So moving forward strategy that we can embrace is more towards, let's take a look on this place where if I can create a layer 2 segmentation on different production line. For example, I can just place an IPS to the core and then I create a network segmentation on layer 2. So I don't change the network architecture. I don't have to create VLANs and complicate the network traffic. High performance device with a low latency, creating multiple segmentation. So what is the benefit of doing that? Let's say if there is any outbreak or virus or ransomware happens in any of the segmentation, this will be just contained within that production line. It will not just bring down your whole operation there. And if there is any response action you need to take, you can actually take and contain it as fast as you can, because this is no longer a flat network. Though it's in layer 2, you can contain it and protect it using the network IPS. And some of the follow-up benefits you can apply there, you can prevent lateral movement attack both in between the production lines, having a traffic going through the IPS applied at the core switch level. And you can also have an outbreak prevention, attributes towards risk mitigations. In future, if you want to apply a zero trust philosophy, like this is not supposed to happen, if that happens, I have a prevention mechanism running in there to prevent the attack at a different level. And there are chances where 5G will have a lot of connectivity there. People used to connect it to the 5G connections or 4G connection and try to create a bridge to the OD space. That can be prevented through by routing it back to the IPS or containing them to a specific network there. And in terms of vulnerabilities, we talked about vulnerabilities in a huge time. We spent a lot of time there. How would it impact and what are different type of vulnerability we can see in OT space. Now, applying these patches to these devices also has this implication to the business in terms of compatibility, in terms of downtime, in terms of maintenance window. So how can we effectively cover this gap of vulnerability? So we could apply a virtual patch. This virtual patch can be applied in terms of network IPS rule. So if we see any attack targeting specific vulnerability in terms of protocols, applications, OT applications, operating system vulnerability like Windows 7 legacy systems, we can block them at the network level. So it doesn't affect your operations. You don't have to wait for the downtime. You can just turn on those vulnerability virtual patching rules, and that kind of prevent from getting attacked. It actually helps with zero-day prevention and enhance your patching process. So we can reduce the mean time to patch as long as having the network IPS rule covering the vulnerability. So how do we handle this situation? If there's zero vulnerability available, where you have a situation when there's patches not even available, or you do not have the time to test the compatibility and apply the patch for the legacy operating systems. The first step we could do, once you can actually enforce your segmentation, you can actually isolate some of this vulnerable system into a network segment. I can say, hey, these are my Windows 7 systems. I'm going to place them in this network segments, and I'm going to turn on those, let's say, vulnerability rules for Windows 7, Windows XP. If there is any attack targeting some of these devices, block them. And the next approach would be like saying that I would turn on virtual patch. When I say virtual patch, is actually a network IPS rule for the vulnerability. So how that works, when you see, we allow all the regular traffics to go through, but if we see an attack or traffic targeting to exploit that specific vulnerability based on network signature, we can automatically block them. So that's how we call this virtual patching. Applying this also do not have to wait for a system downtime or maintenance window. This actually helps you to apply it on a network level. So it's a very transparent process, and you can quickly cover the gap in terms of vulnerability windows for exposed to a ransomwares or even advisories and so on and so forth. So this is a quick, effective approach. You can say how you can contain the attacks, how you can cover the vulnerability gap using a network IPS and a segmentation having a virtual patching in place. And the third level of control that you can enforce from the network level is also to say trust list, like who can access what. So you can even go to a granular control of saying the D protocol, OT protocol inspection to say, hey, I may have my maintenance people connecting through the VPN. So I want to enforce a control to say, whenever they connect to the VPN, coming to access to some of my devices, he can only have read access. He cannot change anything. To my device, nobody will have reboot access, shutdown access, and so on and so forth. So you can actually monitor and manage and gain control of what protocols can be accessed in terms of read-write or reboot access commands can be applied in terms of complete protocol visibility and inspection and control over OT protocols. And all three can be applied on a single device. So what I'm leading towards is more of TX1 H Pro IPS, where we can apply virtual patching on the network IPS based on rules. And as we discussed before, we have been extensively involved in terms of vulnerability research on ICS space. So those pre-disclosed information, when we give it to the customer, to the vendors, we can actually use this intelligence to create a vulnerability virtual patching rule on network IPS to protect and defend against these vulnerabilities. So we can be pretty ahead of the vendors itself. And it also helps the network segmentation process by creating layer 2 network, so it doesn't affect your traffic routings and protocol communication, application communication in such a way. And we can also create network trust lists, so in a way that you don't have to worry about if someone is violating a protocol, access list, or running a unexpected command in the production lines. All three coming from a single appliances. So key benefits as a summary. So as this device, as we talked about it, and as you know, this is kind of a new topic. Every time when I say, hey, we have to place a device inline, there's always a pushback with the operation team. But I think due to the business demand today, what we are today, there need to be a shift to look towards an inline device and to have prevention capability systematically enabled to protect against this ransomware and malicious attack. And to make sure that it doesn't affect your regular production and productivity line, because there's a sensitivity in terms of latency. We also have inbuilt high availability for the appliances. We also have inbuilt failopen in the event if the device file traffic will still pass through. It has high port density because some places we see in terms of smart factories, the scarcity of the ports, network ports and switch ports issues in there. So as this device have a lot of port density there that can be used there. It has a very low latency, so we can share the details if you're interested in more latency level for running inline inspections. And it also helps with virtual patching. I can quickly bridge the gap in terms of application and servers and legacy OS vulnerabilities in a nutshell. So that's in helps of addressing three key problems we discussed before. How do we fill the gap in terms of vulnerability? How can I bring a trust list of saying who can access what can be done in these protocol levels? What kind of command is loaded within this protocol can be enforced as well. And it can also achieve in terms of segmentation. So this helps to reduce and contain the attack within the same segment, avoid attack targeting specific vulnerabilities, even if it is unpatched on the system level, and also to have a visibility of what kind of protocols are running and take control over your IT and OCS network. And how we helped so far is the customers as a TX1 Networks, as a trusted ICS security partner. That's the first use case we discuss in terms of network, because that's the easiest part to apply. When we talk about installing agent, the device is a lot of justification, validation process to be taken care. But depends on the customers, they would actually take a different approach. So we would say on a network level, if looking at a core switch level, we can apply this. If you see in the middle of this picture to your left-hand side, network, ICS, IPS, and firewall. So that's what we're talking about in terms of enforcing virtual patching, access control, as well as the segmentation. And you also have to your right in the same side of it, you will see a IPS box there. That's a mini size of it. So typically we call as edge IPS, and this can be even brought forward to level 2 and 1 to create micro segmentation for a few devices. So if you have any devices where you want to create isolate them to a smaller group and create a micro segmentation, the edge IPS Pro can be helped as well. And in the 3.5, if you want to create segmentation of network on layer 3, create an access layer, stateful inspection, and industry-grade IP firewall, we also have a firewall solution which covers that as well. And in terms of, you may have situations within IT, ICS, and OT spaces, you may have situations in terms of having standalone devices where I cannot install any agents. Because in the IT and OCS space, we cannot run heavy lifting agents where if it takes a lot of resource on the system, it affects the production and operations. So we also offer an portable security, which actually helps to scan for viruses by just plugging in there. You don't have to install agent. And that portable security also helps to update antivirus definition. If you just take the thumb drive and connect it back to any of the internet connection system, it actually update your antivirus software from the thumb drive. So you don't have to install any agent. You can plug it and scan. So we have customers who are actually using this for auditing and compliance purposes, or even to check and validate if any of the OT systems are infected with virus. For example, you may not be able to scan a system, and if there is a virus found, you may not be able to clean it because it may void warranty for some of the OT systems. So we have customers who are using this over TMPS3 plugin, scan. If there is any virus found, they can just log it and then report to the vendors to do an RMA process and so on and so forth. This can be used before you even onboard the device into the OT and ICS space. You can just plug in before you connect them from the vendors into your OT network. You can scan for virus, and then if there's any virus found, you can revise it or send it back to the vendors to fix it, or you can validate it, audit it, and then connect it back. So we do have customers who are actually using this to say, if I have any vendors who are trying to come into my OT space or smart factories to do a maintenance work, they validate if their systems and laptops are not infected with virus with the TMPS3 before allowing them to connect to the OT network. So that there are many use cases which can be applied for TMPS3. And the final approach is using our whitelisting and lockdown. Having antivirus have a big pushback from the operation teams as well, because it requires antivirus definition update, and the scanning take much longer time. The alternative approach to that is also deploying in a whitelisting software on the systems, like you take an HMI interfaces that's running Windows and so on and so forth, where we can actually whitelist the entire system and say whatever running the systems is perfectly fine after scanning for virus using TMPS3. And then if there is no infection found, we just lock it down. So moving forward, if there is a new EXEs, new ransomware attacks, malware attacks cannot execute, even if they have an administrative rights. And that approach really helps because it doesn't take much of resources on your system because it's whitelisting. I don't have to update regularly. And it also helps to do a configuration lockdown. For example, if I want to lock down a PLC configurations or even say HMI configuration files, we can lock down as well. There's multiple approach. We offer the breadth and depth of solutions for OT right from level 3 towards level 1 and 0. So it depends on customers. They take and adapt it based on their business need. And how does this solution fit in, as we discussed in this previous slide? So as TMPS3 portable security can be adapted as the auditing and compliance tool, and the endpoint protection can goes in agent form into the systems, whitelist it, lock it down. So if you have a lot of legacy systems like XP, Windows 7, and so on and so forth, where a lot of antivirus vendors may not even support them, and you may not have a patch. So how do we protect this system? So you can actually use whitelisting approach to protect them, but it will not take much of resources. At the same time, systems are covered from the attacks. And the network level protection, where we talk about edge IPS on the other previous slide, also create micro segmentation within the production line, and also the edge firewall also helps right from the level 3 to create segmentation on network level, and of course the edge IPS role, which we discussed before, creating layer 2 segmentation, virtual patching, all in one from a single box. So as you can see from there, level 3 all the way down to the 1, we can create solutions and security layers and different part of it. And having all the solutions running in different layers, we also have a centralized visibility, reporting back the violations, the detections, and the protocol visibilities and device visibility back into our ODC console for investigation auditing purpose. That's the footprint. And here's a quick use case for this is one of the customer case study from water treatment control network. But the customer had some of the attack in a previous situation, so they engage us. They want us to control the ransomware attacks, enable virtual patching, create segmentation, and we help customers placing. It's a high-speed network, high demand for low tolerance to latency. So we place our Edge IPS Pro, create virtual segmentation, virtual patching, and with a centralized visibility for the customers. And now the customer is evaluating how they can move forward towards creating micro segmentations as well as the layer 3 firewalls for the network layer 3 network segmentations as well. So as in terms of Trend Micro and TX1 Network, we have an extensive validation in terms of third party. So if you look at the Trend Micro solutions, most of the solutions right from endpoint, network, cloud workloads has been established in the market, well deployed, well recognized by the third party vendors, third party assessment vendors like Gartner's and A/B tests and so on and so forth. On the other hand, we continue to invest in terms of vulnerability research on ICS, and we continue to disclose vulnerability. That intelligence all goes back to our TX1 network products, enhancing them, protecting customers against cyber threats. And we continue to invest and enhance the solutions right away. So we're the first one in the market to come up with IoT and ICS threat atlas. So if you go to the website, www.tr.tx1-network.com, you can actually see the latest attacks that's happening around the globe in terms of OT protocols, type of attacks targeting specific networks, and et cetera, will be listed down there. So I want to just take you to so that's pretty much we are going towards the conclusion of the session itself. So we discussed, just to summarize it, we discussed in terms of cyber threats, and we talked about business challenges, operation demands, needs, and how we can overcome them in terms of applying different strategies, approach, and use cases, right from virtual patching, segmentation, access lists, and what are the different type of solutions from TX1 networks can be applied at different layers of OT networks to address effective cybersecurity and have a centralized visibility. But as you see from here, the IT-OT convergence does not just stay within the ICS environment. As you connect to the IT network, you may hear a lot of stories. The attack originated from the IT and then moved into the OT and OT space, maybe from somewhere from email, from a system admin, and traveled into the OT space. So there is an imminent need for us to detect, have visibility on OT network traffics, details, as well as correlate it with the IT data itself. The Trend Micro has a strategic approach towards this. We call this extended detection response in the IT space, which we have a lot of customers embarking into the strategy on IT cybersecurity, where we can do detection response beyond just endpoint, network, cloud workloads, and email. We collect the telemetries, correlate them, identify attack, and you can actually respond it right away from the XDR console itself. So that's the currently available feature sets in a short summary, and that space can be used to say visibility and see how the attack starts, where the attack right now in terms of scope, how the attack is progressing within the network, to have a complete visibility in a simplified form, and then taking a response based on that for the IT itself on 4 different layers. Moving forward, we're also planning to integrate TX1 devices and solutions into the XDR strategy. It's actually a console itself. So by right, the customer should be able to see how the attack originated. Does it start from the OT and descend into the IT, or does it start from IT and goes into the OT? You can see the complete visibility part there. Typical approach for this space is where customers straight away go into an SIEM solution, try to correlate the data from both devices. But that's a lengthy approach because you still have to create parsers and rules to correlate and look for the right data to see if there is an attack within these two spaces. We heavily lift the task within the Trend Micro XDR. We have pre-built rules and policies to look for rules and filters and detection modes to look for such attacks. And it continues to get updated by Trend Micro itself because solutions and logs are from us, so we know better than anyone else. By doing that, we send a high fidelity alerts and consolidated alert to an SIEM and so we're not just having the solutions that we have lined up in the OT space. We have a plan towards integrating them in terms of visibility, detection, response moving forward for our customer. This is where we're heading towards in terms of OT and the next steps with OT on Trend Micro TX1 Networks. So I want to conclude this section with 5 key takeaways as the summary. So we have to adapt layer 2 network segmentation with industry-grade IPS. So this will really improve IT/OT threat, ICS/OT threat containment readiness for your space. So if there is an attack, you can contain within the production lines within a specific network, so you can keep your operation running even if there is an attack. The second approach is in terms of strategy that you can take forward is virtual patching, network virtual patching. Vulnerability is the biggest weak spot for most of the organization, be it IT or ICS space. So having a virtual patching on network level will have a win-win situation. You don't have to wait for the downtime. You don't have to really test the compatibility on the systems. You can enable virtual patch on the network level, reduce the mean time to patch, and increase your security efficiency as well. The network trust list will give you an edge and control over who can do what kind of command is loaded within the production line and production hours, and having a visibility and controlling protocol violations on OT space. And applying in portable security scanning devices to check and audit and validate before you allowing a device to be connected to OT space, or before a vendor coming in for maintenance in terms of scanning the vendor's devices itself, helps to reduce a lot of influx of attacks, attack propagations coming from a laptop itself. It also helps to meet your auditing requirements to check the standalone systems if they're not infected with virus. In applying an agent-based approach, whitelisting is an alternative control to protect your legacy systems from being attacked and compromised, and having them stay intact and keep your operation running without having a performance issue. These are 5 key takeaways or strategies or use case can be adapted as the next steps moving forward strategy for ICS and OT space. And thanks for listening for the webinar. I'll talk to you in the next webinar sessions. Thank you.
The Industry 4.0 digital revolution has changed industrial control systems forever. Modernization and connectivity, with the fast improving science of automation, have become essential to production and workflow efficiency. However, these same improvements in automation and the internet also create new, fast-changing cyber threats. If every piece of complex equipment on your network is connected, they can be completely annihilated by a hacker attack. Traditional machines must be separated from each other to guard against infection and many other cyber threats. TX1 Adaptive Cybersecurity for ICS shop floor protection was designed with this in mind, providing 3 crucial advantages. First, network segmentation arranges your assets into isolated groups based on their purpose, sharply limiting options for attack. Second, virtual patching can block loopholes and shield vulnerabilities of legacy or unpatchable systems, protecting your sensitive critical assets. Third, trust listing allows you to specify what can happen in your ICS protocols instead of what can't, creating superior supervision and control. TX1 offers complete solutions from network to endpoint. For networks, Edgefire and Edge IPS create a perimeter defense and implement segmentation. In addition, through virtual patching, different communications protocols can be adjusted in fine detail, including management by trust list. For endpoints, we provide Trend Micro Portable Security, which requires no installation, and SafeLock, which requires no updates. Both can be rapidly deployed with minimal interference. They even include trust list self-defense technology to safeguard your endpoints. Even better, all cybersecurity information can be reported to the central console, creating convenience and flexibility for your cybersecurity. Right now, TX1 is in the process of integrating AI. Through self-learning, systems will be able to create superior self-defense and provide resolutions adapted to each situation. Choose us. We provide you with the perfect solution. Adaptive cybersecurity for ICS shop floor protection. In the era of digital transformation, digital cybersecurity must also transform.